morning. My name is Jen Beaker. I'm with Crestwood, and I wanted to thank everybody for joining us today for our webinar. We have Tony presenting today. The topic is on Dynamics GP System Administration, what you've always wanted to know but were afraid to ask. Tony is a senior consultant at Crestwood, and he has been working with GP for over 8 years. If you do have a question during today's presentation, we will make some time to try to answer those. Please go ahead and type that into your question tool pane. It's part of the Citrix GoToWebinar screen. There's a little questions area. We'll monitor those throughout the day, throughout the webinar. Try to ask as many as we can, and if we don't have time to get to everybody's questions, we will follow up with you afterwards via email. Also, when the presentation is over, if you could please just take a couple minutes and answer the few survey questions that will pop up on your screen after the webinar, we would greatly appreciate it. On that note, I'd like to turn things over to Tony. Thanks, Tony.
Thank you, Jen. Hi, everyone. I recognize some of you, some of your names. Welcome. Thanks for coming out to GP System Administration, what you've always wanted to know but were afraid to ask. Today, again, my name's Tony Corey. This is my email address. If you have any questions, you can email Jen or myself, and we'll stop for questions and answers in between topics, but later on you're like, oh, I should ask about this. You can always email us and we'll have an answer for you. Today we're going to discuss creating test databases, backing up and restoring databases, creating a database maintenance plan, monitoring backups, making sure your backups are actually being performed, and using checklinks and reconcile features to check how well your SQL database is doing. And we're not going to do this in this order. We're going to start with checklinks and reconcile today. Okay, so a number of you probably have had this happen where you have users entering data and either the network goes down mid-transaction or the power goes down, and you have issues with the data. You know, some of it posts and some of it doesn't, and some of it writes to tables and some of it doesn't. Microsoft has created a couple tools in GP, specifically checklinks and the reconcile feature, to assist you in making sure that the database is sound and that your records are safe. So checklinks are usually run when you suspect data corruption in your GP database. So, for instance, going back to that going back to the power outage example, one of your customers was inadvertently deleted from the tables. Checklinks can be run and will review the transactional information, you know, invoices, payments, etc., and then match them up with the records in the customer master table. And if the customer was deleted or damaged, checklinks, the utility will recreate the customer. And checklinks isn't just there for the customer table. I can show you where you go. Tools, routines, oops. Checklinks, thank you. This is my first presentation, so bear with me. So Checklinks is available in all of these series. So from financials to sales to purchasing, inventory, payroll, project, system. Anytime you have an issue or you think you have an issue with your data and the quality of the data, the checklinks can be run to check the quality of the data and make sure there's no orphaned records or any other issues. For instance, in financial, it'll check your accounts, your budgets, the setup of your financials. If you're using multi-currency, it'll check your multi-currency setup, and on and on. Sales, it'll check your invoice history, your invoice work, and on and on. When you run checklinks, what you need to remember is that you can only be logged in, be the only person logged in. So typically you would log in as SA and check your, do the checklink. So you would check account master and then hit OK. And after each checklink, it will produce a report to show you if it found any errors. So it's running right now, and it didn't find any errors. So checklinks are a little dangerous, not dangerous, but it's going to make a change in your system if it finds a record that's missing. It's also going to change your database if it finds, say, an orphaned record. So two things you have to remember before you run checklinks. Besides, first of all, being the only person to log into the company, you need to make sure that you have a backup. The backup is very important here, just in case checklinks makes a large number of changes and you're not comfortable with the changes and you want to go back to the previous state. Now, checklinks are kind of like an oil change. It's a good idea to run, say, after close once a month to check the health of your system. And similarly, the reconcile function is also like that, and you want to try to do it at least once a month as well. The reconcile feature does not check master records. Instead, it checks balances and totals. Let's go back here. Reconcile is also available in all of the modules, just like the checklinks. So for instance, logged in as SA, you could go to Tools, Routines, Financial. You can reconcile the GL. Sales reconcile, purchasing reconcile, inventory reconcile, on and on and on. Going back to the power outage example, instead of losing a master record, the power outage could have caused the calculations on a batch to be out of balance on some invoices. or it could have caused a customer's total outstanding balance to be inaccurate. The Reconcile utility goes back through the detailed transactions and verifies that the totals match the details. Okay. We could run, in the example that we mentioned when we first talked about checklinks, about a customer missing, you would run checklinks to bring the customer back, and then you would run the Reconcile utility to have the system recalculate the balances for the customer. And again, it's available in all modules. Some people, recommend that if you're going to do like your oil change at the end of the month and you want to run your Reconcile, you're going to do them all. You should do the SOP first, then the POP, inventory, project if installed, and then field service if installed. Now going back to before you do the checklinks and Reconcile, it's again really, 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 really important that you do a backup. Backups, you know, are going to save your bacon, and we're going to go over how to save your bacon and how to automate it so that you have backups on a daily basis and sometimes even on an hourly basis. We're going to talk about 3 different kinds of backups: database backups, application backups, and the SQL Server security settings backup. Now, with SQL Server, there are a number of ways that you can back up your databases, and many of you have IT teams already in place that already have standards and predetermined backup intervals. So let's go in and I'll show you how to back up a database first, and then we'll talk about maintenance plans on how to automate those backups so that you don't have to do it manually every day. It'll automatically do it. You can do full backups or differential backups, and we'll talk about the differences between those. So let's start with we're going to go to SQL Server Management Studio. Go ahead and minimize that. And this is my instance of SQL, and these are my databases. Dynamics is the base database for GP, and my production company I've named Prod, and that's the database for that. To back up the database manually, you right-click on the database, go to Tasks, click Backup. It's going to present you with this window. You can, whenever you back up manually, generally you want to go with a full backup. And what you'll do is you'll define where you want the backup to go. So you click Remove. Typically what you see here is where the backup occurred last. So when you when you click remove, it's not going to remove the last backup. It's just going to remove where the destination, is defined. So we're going to click it and add a destination. This window will pop up, and then you can select where you want the data to go. So we're on the C drive. I'm going to put the backup in temp. And typically, you name the backup in a meaningful way so that you know what it is. I just rename the backup according to the database name, so dynamics, and then a dash and the date, so it's easier to see. 2/11/15.BAK. I'll hit OK. I'll hit OK, and now it's defined to go to this destination. This seminar will be recorded, by the way, and so if you guys are like writing notes and I'm going too fast, first of all, you can tell me to slow down, but you'll get the seminar after this shortly. So then, after you've defined where you want it, you click on Options, and I click on Verify Backup when finished. This doesn't matter right now because you're creating a new backup set, but if you had an existing backup set and you wanted to override it, you could override it or just append directly over it. And then I hit OK. And you can see the progress right here. And Dynamics is typically a smaller database, so it's going to go much quicker. And then I'll do the same thing for prod. That's my production database. Again, I'm going to define where I want it to back up to. And I'll call it prod 2/11/15. Okay. These one-off backups are useful when you want to make a change to the system and you're not sure about what the outcome is going to be, whether it's installing a patch or running checklinks or installing a third-party product. It's always a good idea to back up. So I'm going to go ahead and verify the backup again. If there's an issue, it'll tell you that it's that it's not verified, and you'll know that it's not a good backup. So hit OK, and it's backed up. So we can go into temp. And here are the backups that I created. These are some old backups that I created this morning to make sure that the backups work. And then what do you do with these backups? A little later, we're going to create a test company, and we're going to take the data from the production company and move it into the test company, so that you can have a fully functional test company to play in, like a playground. Do whatever you want to do, try stuff out that you or your users would like to try out or learn about without actually harming the production database or creating transactions that really don't belong there. but that's a little later on. Let's go now and talk about SQL maintenance plans and how to create a SQL maintenance plan. Basically, what a SQL maintenance plan does is it creates a backup for you, and it's automated. You can schedule it. You can tell it what to back up, which databases, where, and whether it's a full backup or a differential backup. So let's go into the Management Studio again, and we're going to go to Expand Management. And this is the folder where the maintenance plans reside. I have one already there. Let's create one. There's two different ways to create a maintenance plan. One is the wizard and one is manually. We'll go ahead and start by creating a maintenance plan through the wizard. It's convenient. It does all the work for you. So we'll click Next. Let's name the maintenance plan Auto Backup, or even better, let's call it Nightly Backup. And for description, this plan creates it's a good idea to create a description, especially as you have, as you go on, you'll create more and more maintenance plans, and you'll want to know what they are. Now, you can. There are a number of different tasks that you can have the maintenance plan do, and you can have the tasks on separate schedules. For now, we're going to keep it on a single schedule. It's like one big package, and it all runs one right after the other within that package. So, for instance, for this nightly backup, I want to check the database integrity. I want to shrink the database. I'd like to back up the database fully, and let's just keep it at that. Again, you can update statistics or rebuild indexes or clean up history, and all of those are described below right here. Tells you what it does, but let's stick with these three. So you click Next, and this next window asks you if the order is how you want it. So for instance, in this plan, we're going to check the database integrity first, then it's going to shrink the database, then it's going to back it up. So we'll go Next. I like the order of it. So for the first task, the integrity task, it's going to ask you which databases you want to do that for. And I'm going to select all the databases. Again, you can pick and choose which ones you want. I'm going to go ahead and select all. This button down here, the Ignore Databases where the state is not online, sometimes you can take a database offline if it's having issues or problems and you want to deal with it later. If the database is offline and you can back it up, but if it has a problem and it causes the backup to fail, it will kill the backup entirely. So it's always a good idea to have this ignore databases where the state is not online checked if you have databases that are offline. It avoids issues. All right, so we've selected all databases. We're going to click Next. Now it's going to ask about the shrink database task, and we're going to do the same thing, all databases and ignore databases. And we'll go with the default. Sometimes our GP databases are many gigs in size, and the logs and the databases themselves shrink down very nicely after running this shrink database task. And if you run it nightly, it keeps it managed pretty well. You can return the freed space to the operating system, and then that way the system realizes that gain, and you'll have fresh space every day. So we'll click Next. Now we're going to define the backup. And again, we'll go with all databases, ignore the databases that are not online, and hit OK. We're going to back up to disk. This directory right here is where the you can define your directory where you want the database to go, the backups rather, and typically you want them to be to have a BAK file extension. I like to verify the backup integrity. That way you know you're getting good backups. And when you compress the backup, it makes it a little bit smaller, again giving you some more space on your server. So I'll click Next. This folder right here produces a log. The log will be produced and popped in here after every after the maintenance plan executes on a daily basis. And we'll go over that in a moment. Okay, so this Complete the Wizard screen shows you exactly what you're going to do. We're creating a maintenance plan called Nightly Backup. We don't have a schedule selected yet. We're going to check the database integrity. We're going to shrink the database, and we are going to back up the database and all the databases. And click Finish. And it succeeded in creating the plan. So I'll close this and right-click here and hit Refresh, and it should appear. Now, I didn't specify the schedule, so we can go in and see what this looks like inside. Again, here's the name. This is what the description is. The schedule is defined right here. If you click right here, you can define it for every night of the week. You can do it weekly, daily, or monthly. It occurs every week on Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And we have it set at midnight and starting tonight with no date, end date. And this is key too, it's enabled. You can always unenable it, and that'll postpone or not run the job, or you want to keep it enabled, and it will do that. We'll adhere to the schedule. These are the tasks that this plan currently has. And if you were to double-click the backup, you'll see this is familiar because this is what we just defined. For those of you that want to see the SQL script that's going to run, you can see that here to back up all the databases. And then to save it, you just go save. And it's scheduled now to run at midnight every night. If we want, we can run it right now by right-clicking it and hitting execute. And it's usually a good idea to make sure that your maintenance plan works. So after you've created it, go ahead and run it. Should take a couple more seconds. My databases aren't very big. Do any of you have any questions while this is, it should be finished in a minute.
I only had one question come in so far, Tony. It was just something about checklinks, but I believe you covered it. And also, I'll send out a copy of your PowerPoint presentation to everybody after the webinar is completed. So that should help too.
Yep. Now, if you guys notice, the execution failed, and you can click the message, and it gives you such a good reason why the execution failed. Close. Let's go back here and view history. So when that failed, you can look at the log by going in View History. You can check on job. You click Job History right up here. Check on that. Just check on the nightly backup, and let's see why that failed. Okay, so let's just copy this whole thing real fast and we'll take a quick look at it. Oh, that's why. If you, I set the backups to back up with compression, but on the standard edition of SQL 2008, it's not available. Don't save. So let's go back to nightly backup real fast. We'll click on backup. We'll use the default server setting, hit OK. We'll save it. And I'll rerun it again. And we'll let that run. Now, you can schedule full backups once a day or twice a day or whatever you'd like. Typically, what I've seen done is companies have one full backup a night, and then throughout the day at certain intervals they have differential backups. These differential backups will just back up the deltas from the full backup of that day. So when you create your execution, your maintenance plan, and you get it working, the maintenance plan right here works. I'll wait and see what happens here. Then you can create another maintenance plan and schedule it to run hourly or every 15 minutes if you want. It really depends on how much data you're willing to part with. So for instance, if you select an hourly differential backup, then you're risking an hour loss. Okay, so that looks like it ran. Let's double check that. Hey, it ran. Okay. So let's go back and I'll close this. And again, if I'm jumping around, I apologize. But going back to the nightly backup, if you create this backup and you want to make sure that it works, you can go to the directory that you're backing up to and see that it's being backed up. You can also go back to SQL and right-click on Nightly Backup and View History, and it'll give you every night's run. So, for instance, the first run that we ran didn't work, but the second run that we ran ran fine because I adjusted the compression method and it worked properly. So if going back to, jumping around again, I apologize, going back to the differential backups, if you wanted to create a full backup, a nightly full backup, you would do it that way. And then for differential backups, you would do this. You create a new maintenance plan, and we call it I'm going to call it differential daily. You can call it whatever you like. Oops. Do it this way with the plan wizard. Differential daily. And we'll schedule the interval for every hour, hourly. And we'll go ahead and click on the schedule right here. And we'll do it daily. And we'll let it go every hour, starting at, let's say that you don't let your users touch the computers until 8 o'clock, and so you can define it at 7 o'clock, and everyone's out by 7 o'clock, so you can make it 7 p.m. You can make it 8 p.m. and then it starts today and has no end date. So we'll hit OK. We'll go next. We'll create a backup differential instead of a full. Click next. Again, we'll do, let's say you're just interested in your GP database. So Dynamics has to be one of them, and then your production databases if you have more than one. Again, you can click this ignore databases where the state is not online, just in case you take one of your databases down. You'll want to verify backup integrity again. Click next. The report will go to this folder right here. So you want to keep an eye on your log. You can create a shortcut on your desktop, and it'll, you can always take a look and make sure that it's backing up the right way. Click next. Here's the definition of the maintenance plan. Hit finish and close. Refresh, and its differential daily is right here. And it is enabled. So in an hour, if we were to go back and come back to this, we could go and see the differential backup that has been created. We can go into the log, and it'll show you that the differential has been created. We can additionally go here, right-click on differential daily, click view history. Now, it hasn't run yet, so you're not seeing anything, but when it runs, it'll show up in the history. We can run it right now, and it shouldn't take that long. We're only doing three databases, and there it is. View history, and there is the log. Okay, so you've created your maintenance plan, you're backing up daily, you may or may not be backing up hourly. That directory is going to start to fill up. It's going to fill up, and you're going to want to limit it to, say, a week's worth of backups or 2 weeks worth of backups. So let's create a different maintenance plan called cleanup. So go back to maintenance plan again. Actually, I want to do one thing real fast and copy this directory where the backups are being held. I'm going to do a new maintenance plan, and this time I'll run it, I'll do a manual maintenance plan so you can see what it looks like when you're not using the wizard. DB, we'll call it backup cleanup. Okay. Expand this out a little bit. This
Tony,
maintenance cleanup task, you can left click. Yes.
I'm sorry, it's Jen. We had a quick question, if you don't mind.
Okay.
Does the differential overwrite, or do you need to do a garbage cleanup?
Well, the files will stay there until you clean them up, and you can actually, in this maintenance cleanup task, you can have it. It's a good question. And for instance, on the nightly backups, the full backups, those are going to fill up really fast. And the hourly, or the interval differentials, they'll stay until you delete them, or you automate the cleanup on them. So, and I'll show you how to do. I'll show you how to clean it up. So,
Thanks.
for instance, on the maintenance cleanup task, let me go back here and do that again. So we've created the backup cleanup. Maintenance cleanup task, we're going to drag that over. Control V. And then this will, let's say you want to keep everything for a month. This will allow you to have your files for a month. And what you should do is, when you're backing up your database, you'll want to keep some of your SQL backups on hand on the server, in addition to what your normal backup routine is, whether you're saving it to a storage area network or to tape. This way, you're not waiting for tape to come, and you're not waiting for the tape to restore a backup. This way, you can restore right away. Anyway, what this will do is, if you schedule it once a week, say Sunday at 3 in the morning, it will go back into that directory and clean up your files that are older than 4 weeks old. Now, going back to your question about differentials, you can take the differentials and move them into a different directory. You may have to create that directory. And then you can create a different maintenance plan, a different cleanup. You can call it differential cleanup, and go directly to that directory and say, you can create a maintenance plan to clean it up once a week, for instance, because that will fill up as well. I hope I answered your question. And then we talked about checking the logs and cleanup, and it's going back to backups. We said that we would talk about SQL Server backups, Dynamics GP application backups, and SQL Server security settings backups. And the GP application backup is simply just taking the folder, the GP folder, the client install folder under program files, and right-clicking it and either zipping it or backing it up. Let's see here for a second. And the easiest way to do that is to right-click on your shortcut, hit Properties, hit Open File Location, and you can see here mine is in GP 2013, so go back out one, right-click on that, and either copy and then paste it somewhere else, or you can add it to an archive. And typically you want to back up the application folder prior to any service packs or any installation of third-party products or any significant change. That way your reports are saved, if your reports are within that directory. And all your dictionaries are there. And then that way if a third-party install goes bad, you can always revert back to the original install. And then you also have SQL security settings. And I've had to use this before in real life. What happened is our SQL server died. There was a surge, and the server died, and the drives exploded, and it was a mess. So we lost SQL Server. We had backups, which is life-saving, but backups aren't going to do everything for you. You're going to be able to back up the database or restore the database and GP, but your users, you would have to redo all of your users unless periodically you run something called capture logins. And I'll load that up right now. And Jen will send you guys a copy of this spreadsheet as well. And basically, when you execute this, it writes a SQL script that you can run. It'll create your login for all your users. If you have 100 users, you won't have to create them one by one. You can just copy this and execute it, and it will blow out all the users. So for instance, if you lose your SQL server and you have to rebuild a new SQL server and you restore all of your company databases and the Dynamics databases, you're still going to have to define the users, and this is a heck of a lot easier than creating your users all over again. So periodically, maybe once a quarter or at year end, if you don't change, you don't have a lot of turnover within your GP system, I would recommend running this and saving this script right here with your folder that you've just saved, or save it somewhere else where you know how to get to it, just in case your SQL Server perishes. And then lastly, real quickly, let's create a test database. We don't have very much time left. When you create a test database, you go to GP Utilities, which is usually, it's typically underneath your Dynamics GP folder. It's right here, GP Utilities. It will pop this up, and it defaults to create a company. You hit Process. You name your company database, and this is what it'll look like in SQL. What you name your company is what your company financials typically take on. So you'll put the company name in here. if you want to copy permissions from one company to an actual, your production company over, you should click this and select the company that you're making a copy of. Then next, this is going to give you the file structure of the database that it's going to create, and you run that, and it's going to run. Once you hit finish, it'll flash and have a status bar, and once it's done, it will come here, and it'll give you the options to create SRS reports if you have those defined for your regular company. Also, Microsoft Excel reports in the same fashion. If you click those and hit next, it'll blow those reports out for you, and then in this window, you'll want to set up the company later, because you're going to copy the production database over into the test database. And then that way, so you click next and then finish. And we don't have really a lot of time, but if I may, Jen, what's if we run a little over, what are your thoughts?
People can hop off if they need to, so why don't we just take care of a couple minor things right now in case people have to hop off, and then you can go through creating the test database and people can stick around if they want. I did have one quick question. When you mentioned backing up the GP folder, do you do that on the client or on the server when you run
You would do it
backups?
on the client.
Okay.
You would do it on the client, unless you have a client on the server that you use, but typically it would be a client that that's using. It could be either or.
Okay.
They should be the same.
And then also that nice Word document you just had up on the screen showing us how to create that test database. Can I send that out to people after the presentation also?
Which document was that?
Oh, you were just going through some screenshots on creating a test database?
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay.
Anything that we've shown here tonight, today, I will provide you. And then
Okay.
there's 2 SQL scripts that go with this, and the screenshots for the creating a company
And the PowerPoint?
PowerPoint.
Great,
Yep.
Thank you, Tony. And remember, if you need to hop off, if you wouldn't mind taking a minute to answer our survey questions that pop up on your screen afterwards, we would appreciate it. So, Tony, you're just going to run through a test database?
Just, it should take about 5-10 minutes. And then we'll
Okay.
be done.
All right, if people need to go, they'll just hop off. Otherwise, we'll wrap things up here shortly. Thanks.
And again, the recording is still going on, so if you can't stick around, I'll understand, and you'll be able to see it in the recording. So, okay, so going back to this, I created a test database earlier. When you go through that process of creating a company, it takes about a half an hour, anywhere from 20 minutes to 40 minutes, depending on how fast your server is and how taxed it is. So we created the database, and it's called test. It's empty. It's got an empty company in it, but we want to move prod into test. So let's close out all this stuff so we don't get confused. Okay, so you have your SQL Server Management Studio open, and you want to restore. Let's go here. We created a backup folder. Okay. You're going to have to find out where your backups are being. Oh, actually, we backed up we did a one-off backup into temp, so we can go there. And this is the prod backup that we used, that we created earlier for the production database. Now what we want to do is move this backup into this company. So you right-click the company and you hit Tasks and you hit Restore and you hit Database. And this is going to pop up. Now it's going to show you the last full backup and the differentials. You don't want to restore this company, you want to restore a different company. So you go to From Device, go here, we're going to add a file, and the file that we're going to add is in that temp directory. So go back to temp, expand it out, and the file that we made was prod 21115. So we hit OK. And we hit OK. You're going to click Restore, the Restore button there, hit Options. Now, the original file name is prod date and prod log. This is your data file, and this is your log file. Now, you don't want them to be named the same. You want to rename the test file that we've created. So what you do here is copy this, and you're going to go into the data folder. It's taking its sweet time because it knows that we are in a hurry. Let's try that again. Okay, this is where your live databases are sitting, MDF and LDF, and the data that we're basically copying a backup of prod into test, and so it's GPS test and GPS test log. So I need to rename prod to test, and the log file prod to test as well. So that way, when we send the backup in the temp directory into test, it writes it as test and not as prod. So then you click Overwrite the existing database and hit OK. Okay, and now what we've done is we've copied from the C temp directory, we've copied this backup into test. There's one more step to do, and you have to run a cleanup script. So you drop this drop down to test, or whatever you're going to name your test database. It could be test company or whatever you name it. And then you run this execute. And this will make sure that the company thinks it's test and not prod. Then you can go into test, and it's a direct copy of it's going to be a direct copy of the production database. And all your users are going to be there. So I mean, it's your GL structure will be there, your sales, your receipts, all your reports, everything that you had in production is going to be in this test company. You can Further, you can go into, let's say, for instance, you don't want your regular users to have access. Let's say they only have access to the production company. I didn't set up the precedence yet, but and let's say Thomas Jefferson is your tester, and he needs to get into the company. You would go into Administration, User Access. You click Thomas Jefferson's name and click on Test and hit OK. And now Thomas Jefferson has permission to go into this test company. I know I was going a little fast. I apologize towards the end, running out of time. And that's pretty much it. Can I answer any more questions for anyone?
I don't have any more in the question area, but let's give people a minute or so. If they do have a final question, they can type that in. So thanks, Tony. I did have a couple questions about please sharing the information and the recording, and again, I will send out an email later today with all of Tony's documents and presentation tools, and then probably tomorrow everyone will receive an email with a link to view the recorded session. It generally takes about 24 hours for that to get uploaded and available for viewing. So thanks, Tony.
And thanks everyone for attending, and we'll see you the next one.
All right. Thanks, Tony. Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye, Jen. Bye, everyone.